At the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, we're absolutely passionate about the issue of education and communications. If you look around the world right now, things are moving very fast in terms of climate change. The risks are increasing almost exponentially, but yet so are the opportunities. And the public and other stakeholders and other people involved across communities, across the world, east and west, north and south, need to know what's going on. They need to know what's going on because they need to adapt their communities to the impacts of climate change, and there are many, many opportunities to do that. They need to be aware of that. They need to know what's going on in terms of opportunities for new kinds of businesses, new kinds of low-carbon businesses in areas such as renewable energy, for example. And they also need to know what's going on in terms of what they can do, in terms of influencing the process to lead us to a world in which we peak emissions in the next 10 years, how we then decarbonize our global economies over the coming years and decades, and that sometime in the second half of this century, we actually live in what we call a climate neutral or a net zero world. This requires education, it requires communications. And if we are going to change the world, that's what we need to do. So we're very passionate about this. We're very passionate to be part of an alliance with other UN agencies on this topic. And it can only get better as the world becomes more engaged on moving to a more climate stable, a climate prosperous, and a better world for all. Thank you.
The World Meteorological Organization is passionate about education. We need to educate people so they understand about our climate and so they know how they can protect it and how that they as individuals really can make an impact. We need to educate people to understand that what we as a human race are putting into the atmosphere today in the terms of greenhouse gas emissions will stay in the atmosphere and, more importantly, in the oceans for hundreds, if not thousands of years to come. As part of our education drive, and because we realize that climate change is not always an easy concept to explain, we've produced a series of Weather 2050 videos. This gives imaginary but very realistic scenarios for what the weather will look like in the future in terms of rising temperatures, heavier rainfall events, lack of snow at Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere. We hope that will bring the message home quite clearly and understandably to people in the home that we do face a future which is much, much more inhospitable. Thank you.
Okay, so at the World Health Organization, we see training and capacity building as absolutely essential to combating climate change. Health is one of the issues that people identify with, they understand that it's one of the main priorities for acting on climate change. And also there is new evidence that as we act on climate change, we can save a huge amount of lives, for example, through reducing air pollution. So we have the evidence, but what we absolutely need is to get that message across to people so that they can get behind a strong climate change agreement. So the work that we do through the UN system, through the Alliance, and through all of our partners in NGOs and in the health community more generally, is all about making sure that people see the positive benefits of both making our societies more resilient to climate change, but also the huge health and economic gains they can get from transition to a greener and more sustainable economy.
So what I found really fascinating about this COP in Lima is the way in which climate change education and training has really come of age. It's been an issue for very many years, but we're really seeing the fundamental importance is coming across now. People really are engaging with the issue. It is the base of the pyramid. It's as important as climate finance, it's as important as many other issues. And it's clear that we cannot achieve higher level climate change related outcomes and objectives unless we build those skills, unless they are made a fundamental part of the process. We may see, for example, a high level ministerial statement on the issue, and this is all good news. The second thing that I find very engaging and very interesting about the whole topic is the way in which climate change education is being conveyed. We're getting much better at the messaging. We're getting much better at understanding how education can lead to change, behavioral change, and fundamentally action on the ground. So it's now not a question of the number of people we train. It's a question of the number of actions that result from that training. And that's where we are, and that's what really inspires us.
As we commemorate the 20th year of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, I would like to discuss and talk about the often overlooked and trivialized issue about the gender implications and the gendered nature of climate change impacts. women and men, boys and girls, are differentially impacted by climate change. And this is why it's important to have a gender-responsive approach in climate action. This is where the work of the UN Alliance on Climate Change Education, Training, and Public Awareness becomes very important. And the decision on Article 6 has already put front and center the need to incorporate a gender perspective in climate change education, public awareness, and training. For this reason, UN Women is ready to lead and advance the work on this area, and together with our partners in the UN family, we can work together in advancing gender equality to realize climate justice for all.
Hi, I'm Dan Shepard of the United Nations Department of Public Information. For us, people need the facts. People need to know what their options are. People need to know what we can do to make this world better. 2015 is a very big year for the United Nations and for all the people in the world. 2015 is when the world is going to come together to make big decisions on how to achieve sustainable development and how to address climate change. These are big decisions that we need to inform people about what we can do, what governments can do, what civil society can do, what the individual can do. We are going to be spending much of 2015 letting people know how we can use energy better, use water more sensibly, how to eat better, provide food security, and on a range of issues that will promote sustainable development and address climate change. We need to act now, and this is what we're going to be focusing on in 2015.
It doesn't matter which sector we're working in, whether it's industry, transport, retail, or agriculture. Fundamentally, we have to change business as usual and create systems which are more resilient to shocks and environmentally friendly. Now, whichever the sector, the only way we can do this is changing behavior. So the UN Alliance on Article 6 brings the expertise of all the agencies together to analyze and assess how we can create that behavioral change, but also support the different stakeholders in whichever sector they're working in. So whether it's like your local population, your industry, your organization, they're working together to create the behavioral change that we need to create a better world today rather than tomorrow. And that is why FAO in particular is working with youth under the Younger program, because youth are already creating a better world, especially groups like Scouts and Guides. So Article 6 really needs to support these groups.
Hello, my name is Heiss. I'm working with UNESCO. I'm working on a program called Education for Sustainable Development. We have just less than a month ago celebrated the end of the UN Decade for Education for Sustainable Development, which among several achievements has also shown that education and education for sustainable development is becoming more important in sustainable development policies, in particular in climate change. It has also shown that, especially within the last 5 years, partners, UNESCO, the UN Alliance, managed to help countries develop educational responses to climate change. We have launched a new program, which is called the Global Action Program for Sustainable Development, going over the next 5 years. Climate change education remains a priority. We are working at regional level, organizing experts meetings, developing regional recommendations on climate change education. We work at national level, countries that are interested in integrating climate change education in their education systems. We support them with capacity building of their educators, of curriculum planners, education policy developers. All that we do together with colleagues from the UN Alliance on Climate Change Education, and in particular in the area of global advocacy for climate change education. As an alliance, we appear very strongly, making the point that it is important to find political, economic, and technical solutions to climate change. But if we want to change the way we think about the Earth, the way we interact with each other and relate to ecosystems, we clearly have to scale up education. And this is what we do together as an alliance. Thanks.
Education and communication is central for UNDP's work on low emission and climate resilient development. Without education being built within countries, it is not going to be possible to address climate change adaptation and mitigation in a sustainable way. It is critical that countries have the skills, knowledge and resources in order to take the necessary actions moving forward as climate change unfolds.
UNEP is very proud to be working with the private sector, governments, NGOs and other UN agencies to catalyze action on climate change. We like to educate and train people to be able to take the decisions that are necessary to catalyze action. And now I'm going to hand over to our Tunza youth representative.
Effective youth participation plus education equals climate solutions.